agnostics, long-haired weirdos, short-haired weirdos, vandals, hooligans.
The government, hug the government, love the government, hug the government, love the government, hug the government.
Welcome to The Politics Guys, a place for bipartisan, rational, and civil debate on American politics and policy. I'm Michael Baranowski, a professor of political science at Northern Kentucky University. I'm joined today once again by not one but two co-hosts, Cleveland area attorney and defender of freedom, Jay Carson, and political scientist, Ryan Teaton.
Hi, Mike.
Hi. So, yeah, I realize, Ryan, we do not have a moniker for you yet. Jay is a defender of freedom. We tried, Trey tried to give one to Ken, but nothing stuck. I had some that I think he felt were too bombastic. I don't know. I thought they fit, but whatever. So, well, anyway, if you want to, I don't know if you can self-monikerize. I think I just gave that one to you, Jay, after a while. It just seemed to fit. But anyway, listeners, if you have any thoughts on that. So I don't get a moniker because I just do the intros.
I think maybe Emperor of the Universe is what I would be in.
So you're aiming low. That's good. So I'm just your humble host, I guess, intro reader. But anyway, so, hey, I just wanted to let everyone know, since this is a supporter show, I just wanted to remind you again, if you want to be part of that new thing we're doing, where every month we're going to have a special segment on the show where you can select the topics and then you can you can listen in on the conversation, make little or large comments. Little sounds belittling. You can make all kinds of relevant comments like, wow, Mike just said something that was spectacularly uninformed. Here's the actual facts here. And then that would be good to know. So real-time fact checking us if you want to do that or anything else. I think it should be really a cool experience. I'm looking forward to it. And again, that's going to be available to all of our supporters at the $10 per month or higher level. And if you want to check that out, the other stuff at those levels, it's you know where it at. Patreon.com/politics guys. And in the show notes, you've heard the spiel a million times probably, but we hope you'll check it out. All right. So where we're going to kick off with, I believe, a story that, Ryan, you were going to lead us off on, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We're headed to Oklahoma. So what we have here is that Oklahoma's Attorney General, Gentner Drummond, has asked the U.S. Supreme Court to grant the death row inmate Richard Glossip a stay of execution. Glossip is scheduled to be executed on May 18th for the 1997 murder for hire killing, quote, of Glossip's former boss, Barry Van Treese. Another man, Justin Sneed, admitted robbing and killing Van Treese after Glossip promised to pay him $10,000. However, Sneed received a life sentence in exchange for his testimony and was the key witness against Glossip. The AG says he doesn't believe Glossip is innocent, but just didn't receive a fair trial. Quote, I am not aware of an Oklahoma attorney general ever supporting a clemency application for a death row inmate, Drummond wrote. In every previous case that has come before the board, the state has maintained full confidence in the integrity of the conviction. That is simply not the case in this matter due to the material evidence that was not disclosed to the jury. Specifically, they are looking at a key witness who said they lied on the stand about his psychiatric condition, as well as his reason for taking the mood-stabilizing drug lithium. Glossip has been just hours from being executed 3 times, quote, including once in September 2015, when prison officials realized they had received the wrong lethal drug, a mix-up that helped prompt a nearly 7-year moratorium on the death penalty in Oklahoma. And last development was, quote, on November 2nd, 2022, Governor Kevin Stitt issued a reprieve staying Glossip's scheduled December 8th, 22 execution date to allow time for the Oklahoma Court of Civil Appeals, the Oklahoma Court of Criminal Appeals, to address pending and legal proceedings. The reprieve extended the stay as part of a prior August 2022 ruling and rescheduled the execution for February 16, 2023, which now we know has been stayed. When we're looking at death row inmates in general, there are roughly 2,300 people on the death row in the United States. Jurisdictions that have the most prisoners on death row, California has 729, Florida has 348, Texas has 224, Alabama has 177, followed by Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Ohio, and Arizona. Pew has noted that this peaked in 2000, the number of people on death row, with over 3,500. In time between sentencing and execution, one of the biggest questions that comes up concerning death row inmates. In 1984, the time between sentencing and execution was 74 months, or roughly 6 years. And in 2023, it is 264 months, which is an average of 22 years. The longest person on death row is Hakamada Ao, who has been held. He's convicted in 1968 and spent over 45 years on death row. So the first question to both of you is, what is the takeaway from this issue arising in Oklahoma? So more the specific than the cruel and unusual punishment aspect.
You know, I got to say, it's amazing to me that, as far as I can tell to this point, Governor Stitt's position on this has been, well, I already gave him 2 stays and I'm not doing more because 2's enough. I mean, and there were even Republicans in the state legislature who were saying, no, dude, you really need to issue another stay. And I understand the argument to not grant clemency. And in fact, I believe under Oklahoma state law, he couldn't grant clemency without a positive recommendation from the clemency board. And they were deadlocked on that because the 5th member was someone who was part of the original prosecuting team on the case. But he certainly could issue a stay. And why he would hesitate at all in doing that when his own attorney general is saying, like, wow, we didn't give this guy a fair trial, it kind of blows my mind. I don't know. Jay, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I don't get it either. If there's evidence that he didn't do it, then I'm not laughing because of that. I'm laughing because, as we said, this someone just posted death to Chevron on LinkedIn notification. Anyway, no, but beside that, no. Look, obviously, if there's good reason to think that the conviction is an error, a stay is appropriate until that is determined. So, yeah, I'm not sure what else I can say to that. If the Attorney General is doing his job, it sounds like the legislature is doing its job. So,
well, unfortunately, I would think that this plays into the partisanship of the state as well. When looking at the governor re-examining this case, when you're looking at Oklahoma, you're looking at a state that basically had 0 counties go blue, maybe since 2000. And so it's a very heavily Republican state, which, again, lends towards support for the death penalty. And I wonder.
Well, I mean, I think you could still support the death penalty, but not support killing innocent people.
Oh, no, I meant the governor. Yeah.
I think you can draw.
I'm for that.
Yeah.
But no, yeah, I agree with Ryan.
Like the governor's political position, yeah.
Yeah, I think, right, he, at least, I hope, and I'll say I expect that he will issue another stay, but doing it quickly would have potentially allowed him to be labeled by some very uninformed people as soft on criminals and crime. And so, but to me, I don't know, this guy's had something like, I think, 7 stays at this point, or delays of his execution. And at some point, I got to wonder, this maybe pulls us into the larger issues.
Yeah.
Well, at what point does this become? It reminds me of that. If you're listening to this and you haven't seen The Princess Bride, you really need to just go and do that now, and then come back to the podcast. But where Wesley was on the ship with the Dread Pirate Roberts, right? And he told him every morning, "Well, good job, Wesley. Tomorrow I may kill you." And it's every day.
Yeah.
That to me sure does seem like cruel and unusual punishment. I don't know.
Jay, what do you think on that level?
So I would tend to agree with that. Now again, the governor may have reasons and good statutory reasons that I'm not familiar with Oklahoma to make the call of what he can do when, and if other pieces have to play out first. That could be a reasonable response, or it could just be he doesn't want to be first out of the gate until these other things play out. But in terms of is it cruel and unusual punishment? Well, I would think it certainly comes close to it. It's almost sort of like a mock execution. Now, a lot of times these things happen sort of by necessity, just because time runs out, right? This is one of those legal situations where there is a definite, time that something's going to happen, and everything has to get done right before then. And it's one thing to say, okay, you've got your trial date coming up, and you're rushing. Okay, well, we'll continue the trial. It's something else when you have an execution date that's on the calendar. I don't know any other way to do it, though. Going to have a death penalty. I think you have to set date certain by which things need to be done. But necessarily everybody keeps working up to the very last minute because that's all they can do, right?
Jay, can I ask you if you think it's functioning as a deterrent, just a little more abstract on the death penalty? Because we're on the stats I gave, especially with the individuals being incarcerated on death row, a federal prisoner costs roughly $34,000 a year, and a death row inmate costs anywhere from $50,000 to $70,000 a year. So it's not financially viable. Is it working as a deterrent to, in your opinion, to justify the cost and the complications and the issues that we're seeing arise in different states?
I don't know that it is. And look, I'm kind of going out on a limb here because I don't have any.
The research is split on this. Yeah. So, I mean, there's no definitive.
Right. Exactly.
And its deterrence is something that's obviously incredibly difficult to measure. I didn't do this because of, fear of the death penalty. And I've always been, Mike and I have talked about this a lot on the show, and I had some limited experience with death penalty cases during my federal clerkship. And quite honestly, I see a lot of death penalty as a government program that just doesn't work very well. That is extremely expensive to manage. Doesn't necessarily give you the results that you would hope that it would. That said, I can point to circumstances where I think having the death penalty on the table, can be a good thing. There's the anniversary, I think the 10th anniversary of the rescue of the women from Ariel Castro that was here in Cleveland. This guy who kept these women chained up in his basement for years. And he went to trial, but before he goes to trial, there's a last minute plea deal where they have the death penalty on the table, and he agrees and he pleads guilty and gets life in prison. And by doing so, he saved the victims what would have been the horrible reliving what they went through. He saved the state the time and hassle, the expense, because it would have also been such a big press thing, so much security, all these other things that would have had to have been done.
Yeah.
Saved the state a great deal of time, effort, and money. And he ended up killing himself in prison. So it all
worked out, right? Yeah,
But that's kind of my point though is but for the death penalty, and I think there are probably other cases out there where you can say, listen, here's your choices. You can either take a deal and get life or 20 years or something like that, or you could be facing a death penalty. So I think it can be helpful in some of those cases. Now, again, it's difficult when you've got a case we're saying it's just there's a situation of factual innocence, right? That's different than someone like Ariel Castro or cases where the proof is really not in question as far as culpability.
But yeah, on that, Jay, let's remember that since in the last half century, there have been something like 191 death row prisoners exonerated of all the charges against them. And there are probably more out. So, and that to me is always the big problem, is that there are certain cases like the Castro case. There are cases where it's clear and unequivocal, but there are more than a trivial number of cases where someone is sentenced to die. And almost certainly there have been more than a trivial number of cases where the state has taken the life of someone when they shouldn't have, when they were wrong. And that to me, if you're a real conservative, and if you're worried about state power, boy, you should be worried about that.
I am.
There you go. You're
I
a
would-
real conservative.
I want to kick in here with what Jay was talking. I believe the deterrent aspect, especially on the table, I understand that 100%. I'm wondering if, I'm not going to do this because I'll get the death penalty and die in 22 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't think. I think for
Right.
most-
No,
for most-
I
for most
completely
crimes, it
agree with
doesn't,
you.
yeah.
I agree with you. I think in that, especially at the outset of the trial, and you're looking at that, it absolutely can be that. I wonder if the next stage could, I think, have a higher level of scrutiny. So if it does move to a death penalty case, in some of these cases, there's a documentary called I Am Evidence, and DNA hasn't been tested because they can't afford to, or they're on a delay, or, is there something that raises these all to a different level where someone can look at the facts of the case? Somebody could look at whether the lawyer just shafted them, which I would hate to say would ever occur, but it seems like there are enough documentaries on TV to prove that it does occur. And so when we're talking about putting someone to death, does there need to be something additional that would occur to ensure that those 191 who might have been innocent, that we cross our T's and dot our I's?
There really sort of is. There's a pretty lengthy and robust system, right? And this is why death penalties often isn't enforced for 20 some years, is because there's direct appeals, there's the habeas appeals, there's multiple habeas corpus proceedings and appeals of those. So there, it's not to say that there are no safeguards. There certainly are. Are those safeguards foolproof? No, they're not. Just because of the way our judicial system is set up, right? If it's especially issues of fact that are determined by a jury, it's very difficult, absent new evidence and absent sort of compelling new evidence, to get those determinations overturned, either on appeal or through a motion for a new trial or however. And that's just kind of a how our system is built. And no one's come up with a necessarily a better way to do that.
I think I was thinking about this, if there could be some sort of an even higher standard at the sentencing phase for a capital case, but I know beyond a reasonable doubt is already pretty high. You could say, maybe we could say like a moral certainty sort of thing, but it does become problematic. And to me, in the end, if you're going to have a death penalty, which I'm not in favor of, but if you're going to have a death penalty, I think if you're going to be intellectually honest, you have to admit to yourself that there will be occasions in a big country where we will occasionally get it wrong and kill people we shouldn't have killed. And is that horrific?
You have to be able to balance that equation, and by saying that is a cost. But if I'm being just purely utilitarian, there have been, there are lives saved by deterrence, and that's very difficult to prove that equation.
Yep, absolutely. And that's why
I also think there's, oh no, Mike, I was going to say the ambiguity of that versus a life sentence. When we're talking about a death sentence, it's pretty clear and there's process, but yet life sentences, we can have somebody out in 7 to somebody out in 150 or 3,000, we'll see some of these court cases. So it seems like if it moves to the next level where life is at stake, maybe but you bring up a good point, Jay, that there is a process that is already there. To be able to make sure that everybody is properly either convicted or let free. So we just have to. The big problem is having faith in other people's completion of that duty with rationality and honesty, I guess. Well,
the other problem is just the fallibility of human beings.
Yeah.
Right, and it's there's no way around that, and we can build the systems as best we can, and we can always continually work to improve those systems. And that's maybe the best you can do, but I don't know that you can ever get to that perfection where, someone, a juror can say, or a judge can say, yes, I absolutely think, this person, A, committed the crime, and B, deserves to die for it. It's to have that absolute certainty in that, I don't know that you can get there, and I don't know that you should get there even, right? I mean, that's sort of, and we should note also, I mean, it varies from state to state, but typically the way death penalties work is there's, a jury decides the guilt or innocence, and then it goes to a second phase, which also would involve a jury in most cases, to determine make a recommendation, and then you typically have sort of a judicial override, again, depending on the state, as to whether that, what penalty is given and what sentence is imposed.
We hope you enjoyed this preview of our supporters exclusive midweek show. If you'd like to hear the rest of the episode, we hope you'll consider becoming a supporter. Supporters get ad-free access to all of our shows, membership in our Politics Guys Discord group where you can join in on the conversation, and other benefits at different levels of support. To become a supporter, go to patreon.com/politicsguys. You can also support us through Venmo or @politicsguys or through PayPal. You'll find all of our support links in the show notes as well as at politicsguys.com/support. And if you'd like to get the midweek show, but you're not in a position to become a financial supporter, that's not a problem. Just send me an email at mike@politicsguys.com, and I'll be happy to get that set up for you.